The Meridian's hope was dying. Captain knew this the way a mother knows when her child is sick. She could feel it in the slight tremor beneath her boots, hear it in the groaning of metal that had traveled too far for too long. The colony ship had been built to carry 12,000 souls across the stars, and it had done its job well. But now, after 18 months of hard travel, the reactor was failing. Stood on the bridge and stared at the star map floating before her. The nearest human outpost was 3 months away. They had fuel for 2 weeks, maybe less. But there, glowing soft blue on the map, was a system that might save them. It had breathable air. It had water. It had everything they needed to survive. It also belonged to the Dominion. Every human child learned about them in school. They were the monsters that lurked at the edge of known space, a reptilian species that had built an empire on the bones of 17 conquered races. They did not trade. They did not talk. They simply took what they wanted, and what they wanted was everything. Looked at her crew. Young faces, old faces, faces filled with fear and hope in equal measure. Behind them, in the sleep chambers and living quarters of the massive ship, 12,000 people dreamed of a new home. Farmers, teachers, children, families who had sold everything they owned for a chance at a fresh start on a distant world. She made her decision. "Take us in," she said. "Maybe they'll let us pass, maybe they'll help us." Her first officer, a haired man named Thomas, gave her a look that said he knew better. But he nodded and entered the coordinates. The Meridian's hope groaned one more time and limped toward space. They crossed the border at what the star maps called the Veil, a thin line of sensor buoys that marked where civilization ended and the Dominion began. For 6 hours, nothing happened. Allowed herself to hope. Perhaps they had not noticed them. Perhaps they were too small, too broken, too unimportant to bother with. Then the alarm started screaming. Ships appeared on their sensors like sharks smelling blood. First 5, then 10, then 20. They kept coming, emerging from the darkness between stars, each one sleek and deadly and covered in weapons that made his heart turn to ice. By the time the last ship arrived, 40 warships surrounded the Meridian's hope in a perfect sphere. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The communication screen flickered to life, and found herself face to face with her for the first time. Fleet Commander was 7 feet tall, covered in scales the color of dried blood, and his eyes held the cold patience of a predator that had never known defeat. Behind him, his bridge crew moved with the silent efficiency of soldiers who had conquered worlds. He studied the way a scientist might study an insect pinned to a board. "Unknown vessel," said. His voice was deep and harsh, like stones grinding together. "You have entered Dominion space. This is not permitted. You will power down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in immediate destruction." Kept her voice calm. She had negotiated with corporate executives, government officials, and angry colonists. She could negotiate with this. "Fleet Commander, we mean no disrespect to the Dominion. Our ship is damaged. Our reactor is failing. We have 12,000 civilians on board, including children. We only ask for safe passage to make repairs, and then we will leave your space forever." His eyes narrowed. In his long career, he had heard many pleas. He had heard species beg for mercy, offer tribute, promise eternal loyalty. None of it had ever mattered. The Dominion did not negotiate. The Dominion consumed. But there was something about this creature that made him pause. She stood straight despite her fear. Her voice did not shake. And there was a look in her eyes that he had seen before, long ago, in warriors who knew they were going to die but refused to kneel. "What species are you?" he asked. "We are human," replied, "from a planet called Earth." Turned to his tactical officer, a younger named who had shown great promise in the last campaign. "Scan them. Full analysis. I want to know everything about these humans before we proceed." Nodded and activated the deep scanner. It was the pride of technology, a device that could analyze a ship down to its smallest component. It could read the DNA of every creature on board, catalog every weapon, every tool, every secret. They had used it to assess 1,000 species before conquest. It always told them exactly what they were dealing with. The scan beam swept across the Meridian's hope, and data began flooding into his console. He watched the numbers scroll past, at first with professional interest, then with confusion, then with something that looked very much like fear. His scales, which had been a healthy dark green, began to pale. "Commander," said, and his voice cracked in a way that made every officer on the bridge turn to look at him. "Commander, I think there's something wrong with the scanner." "Explain," demanded. "The readings, they can't be correct. No species could. This must be an error." Strode across the bridge and looked at the data himself. He was a veteran of 30 conquest campaigns. He had seen horrors that would break lesser minds. He had watched worlds burn and species disappear into the dust of history. Nothing had prepared him for what he saw on that screen. His hand gripped the edge of the console so hard that the metal bent beneath his claws. Around him, his bridge crew began to read the same data, and one by one, they fell silent. Someone made a sound that might have been a prayer. Someone else simply walked off the bridge without a word. On the communication screen, Captain waited patiently for a response. She looked so small, so fragile, so harmless. Had never been more terrified in his life. "Commander," whispered, "what do we do?" Had no answer. For the first time in his career, the fleet commander of the Third Armada had absolutely no idea what to do, because the scanner was not broken. It was working perfectly. And it had just shown him that the small, damaged ship before him contained the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever seen. The bridge of the flagship had become a tomb. No one spoke. No one moved. Every officer stood frozen at their station, staring at screens filled with data that could not possibly be real. Fleet Commander read the information again and again, hoping that somehow the words would change. They did not. He started with the biology. The humans were made of meat and bone, like most species. But that was where the similarities ended. Their skeletal structure was reinforced with calcium deposits so dense that ceremonial blades would shatter against them. Their muscles were built for a gravity nearly twice what they considered comfortable. They could run for hours without stopping, a hunting technique so primitive and so terrifying that tactical officer had to leave the room when he read about it. The humans did not chase their prey until they caught it. They chased their prey until it died from exhaustion. But it was the blood that made scales turn white. Iron, the humans carried iron in their blood. To the iron was sacred. It was the metal they used in their most powerful weapons, the substance they mined from asteroids at great cost and greater danger. A single iron blade was worth more than a warship. Iron was death given form. And the humans had it flowing through their veins, every single one of them. 12,000 creatures filled with the most deadly metal in the known galaxy, and they treated it as normal. They needed it to survive. Moved on to their healing abilities, and that was when the second officer began to pray. Humans could regenerate, not like the who needed medical tanks and specialized care to recover from wounds. Humans simply healed on their own, their flesh knitted back together, their bones fused. They could lose limbs and continue fighting. The scanner showed records of humans who had survived injuries that would have killed any instantly, wounds that should have been fatal, and they had simply gotten up and walked away. One human on the colony ship had medical records showing he had broken the same bone 7 times. It had healed 7 times. He was currently working as a simple farmer. The environmental data was next, and had to sit down. Earth, the human. The scanner had pulled the information from the colony ship's database, and it painted a picture of hell. The planet had extreme temperature swings, from boiling heat to freezing cold, sometimes in the same day. The ground itself moved, great plates of rock sliding beneath the surface and causing massive destruction. The air was filled with electrical storms that could kill with a single strike. The water was home to predators with teeth the size of warriors. And yet the humans had not just survived on this death world, they had conquered it. They had hunted their predators to extinction, not for food, not for survival, for sport, for fun. They had killed the most dangerous creatures on their planet because they enjoyed it. The scanner had classified Earth as a Category 12 death planet, had never seen a rating above Category 8. He had not known Category 12 existed. Then came the history files, and that was when truly understood fear. The humans had spent their entire existence at war, not with other species, with themselves. They had invented 1,000 ways to kill each other, weapons of such horror that the military scientists who reviewed the data refused to believe it was real. Nuclear fire that could destroy entire cities, chemical weapons that melted flesh from bone, biological agents designed to spread from person to person, killing millions. The humans had used all of these things on their own kind. They had killed billions of their own species. And they had survived. Every war, every plague, every disaster had only made them stronger. They adapted. They overcame. They kept going. Approached with a tablet in his shaking hands. "Commander, there's more, their culture, their stories." Took the tablet and read about human entertainment. They watched simulations of violence for pleasure. They played games where they pretended to kill each other. Their heroes were warriors and conquerors, beings who had soaked the ground in blood and been celebrated for it. Even their children's stories were violent. Tales of monsters and hunters, of battles and wars, of good triumphing over evil through strength and death. They trained their young for combat, whispered. From birth, their games, their stories, everything prepares them to fight. Thought about the training programs, the years of discipline and conditioning required to create a single warrior. The humans did it naturally. Every single one of them was raised to be a soldier without ever knowing it. He looked back at the communication screen where Captain still waited. She was small by standards, fragile-looking. She wore no armor, carried no visible weapons. She stood with her hands clasped behind her back, patient and calm. And according to the scanner, she could probably kill every on his bridge with her bare hands. "Commander," the communications officer said, his voice barely a whisper. "The human captain is requesting an update. She wants to know if we've made a decision." Stared at the woman on the screen. She looked tired, worried, like any leader trying to protect her people from a threat she couldn't fight. She had no idea what she was. She had no idea what her species represented. They had conquered 17 species. They had crushed civilizations, enslaved billions, built an empire that stretched across 1,000 stars. They were the most powerful force in the known galaxy, and was absolutely certain that if he gave the order to attack, his entire fleet would be destroyed. Not might be, would be. The scanner didn't lie. The data was clear. Humans were not prey. Humans were not victims. Humans were something else entirely. They were apex predators pretending to be civilized. Commander asked, "Your orders?" Closed his eyes. He thought about his family back on the. He thought about his career, his honor, his duty to the Dominion. He thought about the 40 warships under his command, the thousands of warriors ready to fight and die at his word. Then he opened his eyes and made the most important decision of his life. "Open a channel to the High Council," he said. "Priority 1, emergency transmission." "Sir, what should I tell them?" Looked at the scan data one more time. 12,000 humans on a damaged colony ship. Farmers and teachers and children. The most dangerous beings in the galaxy, and they had come asking for help. "Tell them everything," said, "and pray they believe us before it's too late." While Fleet Commander waited for the High Council to respond, his weapons officer made a terrible mistake. She decided to complete the standard threat assessment of the human vessel. Lieutenant was young and ambitious. She had risen quickly through the ranks because she followed protocol perfectly, never questioning, never hesitating. When the scanner finished its analysis of the human ship's weapon systems, she did exactly what she had been trained to do. She compiled the data into a report and presented it to the bridge crew. She should have kept it to herself. The Meridian's Hope was a colony ship. Everyone on the bridge knew this. It was not a warship. It carried no military personnel. It was designed to transport civilians to a new home, nothing more. And yet the weapons it carried made the flagship look like a children's toy. Began with the small arms. Every human vessel carried personal weapons for the crew, and the Meridian's Hope was no exception. The scanner had identified over 2,000 handheld devices that the humans called guns. They used energy weapons, clean, efficient, powered by carefully regulated plasma cells. The humans used something far more primitive and far more terrifying. Their guns worked by creating a small explosion inside a metal tube. This explosion pushed a piece of metal down the tube at incredible speed. The metal piece, called a bullet, traveled so fast that it was nearly invisible. It could punch through armor like paper. It could kill from distances that made weapons look like jokes. The humans created these weapons by harnessing fire and metal. They had turned basic chemistry into death. "They carry these everywhere," said, her voice hollow. "Their security personnel, their farmers, even some of their children know how to use them." But the guns were only the beginning. The scanner had found the ship's tool storage, and that was where things became truly horrifying. The humans had brought equipment for building their new colony, farming tools, construction equipment, medical supplies. Every single item could be used as a weapon. Their cutting tools used concentrated plasma beams to slice through metal. They used similar technology, but only in their most advanced military applications. The humans used it to cut pipes and repair hull breaches. They called them welding torches and gave them to common workers. Their farming equipment included chemical sprayers designed to kill insects and plant diseases. The scanner analyzed the chemicals and found compounds that would devastate biology. A single container of human pesticide could kill every living thing in a city. The humans considered these chemicals safe enough to use around their food. Their medical bay contained drugs that they classified as military-grade combat stimulants. The humans called them painkillers and gave them to people with headaches. The construction equipment was worst of all. The humans had brought machines designed to move earth and rock. Massive vehicles with metal claws and spinning blades, built to tear through the ground and reshape the land. In human hands, they were tools for building homes and planting crops. In a battle, they would be siege weapons. "This is a civilian vessel," whispered. He had returned to the bridge, though his scales were still pale and his hands still shook. "These are colonists, farmers and teachers." "Yes," replied. "And they brought all of this." "Yes." Made a sound that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. "They didn't even bring real weapons. These are just their tools." The bridge fell silent as everyone considered what this meant. The Third Armada was one of the most powerful military forces in the Dominion. Its ships carried weapons designed by the finest scientists, built in the most advanced factories, wielded by the most highly trained warriors. The humans had brought farming equipment and pesticides, and it was still enough to destroy them. Studied the weapons report with growing dread. He had fought in 30 campaigns. He had seen species with advanced technology, species with powerful armies, species with clever tactics. All of them had fallen before but none of them had been like this. None of them had evolved on a world so dangerous that weapons became a part of daily life. None of them had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. The humans didn't need to bring warships. They didn't need to bring armies. Violence was so deeply woven into their culture that even their peaceful tools were deadly. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. The High Council had responded. Opened the transmission and found himself looking at the 7 members of the ruling body. They sat in their ceremonial chairs, surrounded by advisors and guards, their faces unreadable. The Supreme Commander, an ancient name who had conquered more worlds than anyone in history, leaned forward. "We have reviewed your data," said. "The Military Council believes your scanner must be malfunctioning." "It is not malfunctioning, Supreme Commander." "Then explain how a species this dangerous could have gone unnoticed for so long." Chose his words carefully. "They are far from our territory. They have been focused on their own expansion, their own internal conflicts. They have not yet turned their attention to the wider galaxy." "Not yet," one of the other council members repeated, "but they will." "Perhaps," agreed, "which is why we must decide how to proceed very carefully." His eyes narrowed. "You command 40 warships. You face a single damaged vessel carrying civilians. Are you suggesting you cannot defeat them?" Thought about the scan data, the healing, the iron blood, the death world evolution, the weapons disguised as tools. He thought about 12,000 humans who had survived conditions that would have killed any and who considered such survival normal. "I am suggesting," said slowly, "that defeating them might be the worst thing we could do." The council chamber erupted in confused murmurs, raised a hand for silence. "Explain." "This ship carries 12,000 humans. Their colony records indicate there are 8 billion more on there. 8 billion, Supreme Commander. If we destroy this ship, if we give them a reason to come for us, what happens then?" The silence that followed was the loudest thing it ever heard. "They will build real warships," he continued. "They will bring real weapons. They will come for us with the full force of a species that has spent its entire existence preparing for war, and we will lose." On the communication screen, Captain continued to wait. She had no idea that her fate, and the fate of her species, was being decided by creatures who had just learned what humans really were. And in the depths of space, the Dominion faced a truth they had never imagined. There were some species that could not be conquered. There were some species that you simply had to hope would leave you alone. The emergency session of the High Council lasted for 16 hours. In that time, the greatest military minds of the Dominion reviewed every piece of data from Fleet Commander Scan. They ran simulations. They consulted experts. They argued and debated and shouted at each other until their voices gave out. The results were always the same. Admiral, the oldest serving officer in the military, presented his findings to the council with the tired eyes of someone who had not slept in days. He had spent his entire life studying warfare. He had written the strategies that had conquered half the known galaxy, and he had never been more certain of anything. "We cannot win," he said simply. The council chamber fell silent. Supreme Commander leaned forward, his ancient scales creaking with the movement. "Explain your reasoning, Admiral." Activated a holographic display showing the human. Earth hung in the void, a blue and green jewel that looked almost peaceful from a distance. 8 billion humans began. 8 billion beings, each one evolved on a Category 12 death planet. Each one carrying iron in their blood. Each one capable of healing from wounds that would kill us. Each one raised from birth in a culture of violence. He changed the display to show human military history. Images flickered past, each one more horrifying than the last. Armies clashing on open fields, cities burning, weapons that could split atoms. They have been fighting each other for their entire existence. They have developed weapons and tactics for every possible situation. They have killed billions of their own kind and simply kept going. We cannot intimidate them with violence because violence is normal to them. We cannot outlast them because they are built to endure. We cannot outthink them because they have spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. Then we strike first, one of the younger council members suggested. We destroy there before they know we exist. Shook his head. We ran that simulation. Even if we committed our entire fleet, every ship in the Dominion, we would not have enough firepower to destroy Earth before they could respond, and their response would be. He paused, searching for the right word. Final. You speak as if they are gods, said. They are flesh and blood like us. They are flesh and blood, yes, but they are flesh and blood that has been forged in fire. Their bodies are harder than ours. Their wills are stronger. Their capacity for violence is beyond anything we have ever faced. Change the display again, showing the scanned data from the Meridian's Hope. This is a colony ship, a vessel of peace carrying families to a new home. Look at what they brought with them. Look at their tools, their equipment, their supplies. Every item can be used as a weapon. They did not plan this. They do not see it. To them, this is simply normal. He turned to face the council directly. Do you understand what that means? Violence is so deeply embedded in their culture that they cannot even recognize it anymore. They do not think of themselves as dangerous because danger is their natural state. They are predators who have forgotten they are predators because there is nothing left to hunt. Except us, said quietly. Except us. Except every species in the galaxy. If we give them a reason to remember what they are, they will become the greatest threat the universe has ever seen. The council sat in heavy silence. These were beings who had ordered the destruction of worlds, who had watched civilizations crumble beneath their fleets, who had never shown mercy to anyone. And now they faced a choice that made all their previous conquests seem like children's games. Finally spoke. What do you recommend, Admiral? Took a deep breath. What he was about to say went against everything that had ever stood for. It would change their entire way of life, but he saw no other path. We make peace. The words hung in the air like poison. We help them repair their ship. We give them fuel and supplies. We let them pass through our space without harm. And then we send ambassadors to there, not to demand tribute or surrender, but to offer friendship. Friendship, one of the council members spat. The do not make friends, we conquer. Then we change, replied, or we die. He pulled up the final simulation, the one that showed what would happen if they followed their traditional path. First, we destroy the colony ship. The humans will investigate. They will find out what happened, and then they will come for us. The simulation showed human warships entering space. Not 40, not 100, thousands. They came in waves, each one more advanced than the last, adapting and improving with every battle. They learn faster than we do. They innovate under pressure. Within 5 years, they would develop weapons we cannot even imagine. Within 10 years, the Dominion would be a memory. The simulation ended with darkness, empty space where there had once been. Or, said, we can be the first species to recognize what humans truly are. We can offer them peace before they decide we are enemies. We can become their allies instead of their victims. Stared at the blank screen where his had just been erased. You are asking us to submit to these creatures, to bow before them. I am asking us to survive, said. There is no shame in recognizing a superior predator. There is only wisdom. The vote took less than an hour. For the first time in history, the High Council chose peace, not because they wanted to, not because they believed it was right, but because they had seen the scan data, run the simulations, and understood the truth. Some battles could not be won. Some species could not be conquered. And sometimes, the bravest thing a warrior could do was put down his weapon and offer his hand instead. The message went out to Fleet Commander within the hour. He received it on his bridge, surrounded by officers who had spent days living in terror of the small, damaged ship floating before them. He read it 3 times to make sure he understood. Then he opened a channel to the Meridian's hope and prepared to do something no had ever done before. He prepared to help. Captain had been preparing to die. For 3 days, she had watched the fleet hold position around her ship, silent and unmoving. She had made peace with the fact that her 12,000 colonists would never reach their new home. She had recorded final messages for family members she would never see again. She had done everything a captain could do when facing an enemy she could not defeat. And then the commander called with an offer of help. Stared at the screen, certain she had misheard. Fleet Commander's scales had changed color since their first conversation. Where he had been dark red, confident and threatening, he was now pale almost. His officers stood behind him with the look of people who had seen something terrible and were still trying to understand it. "I'm sorry," said. "Could you repeat that?" Spoke slowly, carefully, as if each word was being pulled from somewhere deep inside him. "The Dominion offers the human vessel Meridian's hopeful assistance. We will provide fuel, repair materials, and safe escort to the edge of our territory. We ask nothing in return except peaceful relations between our peoples." Looked at Thomas, her first officer. He shrugged, equally confused. "Fleet Commander, I don't understand. Your species has a reputation for not doing this." His jaw tightened. For a moment, saw something in his eyes that looked almost like shame. "Things change, Captain. We have studied your people. We have learned about your history, your culture, your capabilities, and we have decided that peace is in everyone's best interest." There was a long pause. Had negotiated with hundreds of people in her career, and she knew when someone was hiding something, was definitely hiding something. But he was also clearly sincere about the offer. "May I ask what you learned that changed your mind?" Was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "You are survivors, Captain. You come from a world that should have killed you, and instead you conquered it. You have faced every challenge the universe could throw at you, and you are still here. We have never encountered anything like you, and we hope we never encounter you as enemies." Didn't know what to say. She had come into space expecting death and found something she never could have imagined: respect, fear, and something that might eventually become friendship. "We accept your offer," she said, "and we thank you for it." The repairs took 2 weeks. Engineers worked alongside human crews, fixing the damaged reactor, replacing worn components, upgrading systems that had been pushed past their limits. The two species did not speak much at first. There was too much history, too much fear, too many differences between them. But slowly things began to change. An engineer watched a human technician lift a piece of equipment that would have required 3 to move. She said nothing, but she began to treat the humans with a new kind of respect. A human doctor treated a worker who had been injured during repairs. The alien's wounds healed slowly, so slowly that the doctor worried they might become infected. She realized that what she considered basic healing was actually remarkable by standards. And Fleet Commander spoke with Captain every day, learning about Earth, about human history, about the creatures who had somehow become the most terrifying species in the galaxy without ever realizing it. "You truly don't see it, do you?" he asked one evening as the repairs neared completion. "See what?" "What you are, what you're capable of. Your children play games about killing each other. Your entertainment is filled with violence. Your history is written in blood, and you speak of it as if it were normal." Considered this. She thought about action movies and video games, about football and boxing, about the wars that had shaped human civilization. "I suppose it is normal," she said, "for us." "Yes," replied, "that is what makes you terrifying." The Meridian's hope left space on a bright morning, its reactor humming with new power, its hull patched and strengthened by alien hands. Stood on the bridge and watched the fleet escort them to the border, 40 warships that had once seemed so threatening now serving as an honor guard. As they crossed back into neutral space, A final message came from Fleet Commander. "Safe travels, Captain. May your colony prosper, and may we always meet as friends." Smiled, "Thank you, Fleet Commander, for everything." The screen went dark, and the Meridian's hope continued on its journey. Behind them, the Dominion began a transformation that would reshape the galaxy. In the months that followed, the Dominion from 3 contested systems, releasing species they had conquered decades ago. They sent ambassadors to every corner of known space, spreading a simple message: do not anger the humans. Do not threaten them. Do not give them any reason to turn their attention toward you. Some species didn't listen. A minor empire called the Collective dismissed the warnings and attacked a human mining colony, expecting easy victory against soft, peaceful settlers. The battle lasted 4 hours. The fleet, 200 ships strong, was completely destroyed. The human colonists, armed with nothing but mining equipment and improvised weapons, had fought with a ferocity that shocked everyone who heard the story. After that, the galaxy listened. Humanity continued to expand, building colonies, establishing trade routes, exploring the endless stars. They still saw themselves as explorers and farmers, scientists and dreamers. They didn't understand why alien species treated them with such careful respect, why former enemies suddenly wanted to be friends, why the galaxy seemed to bend around them like water around a stone. But those who had seen the scan data knew the truth. Those who had studied human history understood what lurked beneath the surface of that peaceful exterior. Humanity was the galaxy's apex predator. They were the monster in the darkness, the wolf among sheep, the fire that could consume everything if it ever truly woke up. And the rest of the galaxy thanked whatever gods they believed in that the humans had chosen to be kind. Years later, Fleet Commander wrote a memoir about his encounter with the Meridian's hope. It became required reading at every military academy in the Dominion, a warning and a lesson for generations to come. The final line was simple. The humans have a saying, "We come in peace." We have learned to be grateful they mean it, and we pray every day that they always will. The end.